Welcome to Speak a Dogcast. My name is David Farb, Animal Behavior Specialist, and I am broadcasting from WOUF Wolf Studios in beautiful Palm City, Florida. Thank you so much for joining me again today. If you haven't clicked that subscribe or that follow button, do so right now. New episodes come out every Wednesday, and you're going to want to check them out. You can also follow me on Instagram at Speak a Dogcast, and if the visual thing is more your thing, subscribe to my YouTube channel at Speak a Dogcast. And if you'd like to support the show even further, become a patron of the show today. Patreon.com/SpeakADogcast. If you love the show, if you love what you're hearing, do me a favor, scroll on down, give me that 5-star rating, or leave me a review. I would really appreciate it, yes. Now, I do apologize there was no podcast last week. I was getting out of town. It's kind of my mantra, I think, for getting out of town. I'll be honest. I'm running behind all the time when I'm trying to get out of town because there's just so much to do. Podcast didn't get done. I do apologize for that. Normally, I try to give you at least a heads up if I'm going to not, have it, but usually I don't have the heads up. So here we are, we're back this week. So on today's show, we are creating boundaries for your dog. Yes, how do we do that? What is a boundary for your dog? How do you implement it? We'll talk about that and more. Then we have Pet Hurricane Preparedness. Yes, tis the season. Tis the season in Florida, and for that matter, up and down the East Coast now. We've got to be prepared for hurricanes, guys, and there are definitely quite a few things to think about when it comes to being prepared for a hurricane with your pets. So we'll dive into that. Then we have the History of Animal Mascots 101, followed by the listener Q&A. And if you have any questions for the listener Q&A, you can email me questions@speakadogcast.com or message me on social media. Your question could get featured on the show. Yes, now before we get going with today's show, I have to give you that trivia question. And today's question is going to be, how far can owls turn their heads? Yes, how far can owls turn their heads? I will give you the answer to that question somewhere in today's show. So be sure you stick around, sit, stay, and enjoy the podcast. Next on Speak a Dogcast, creating boundaries for your dog. Now look, guys, simply put, I see it a lot where for some reason we dog owners, we hear this word boundaries and rules and discipline, and all of a sudden we go, oh, I don't want that for my dog. I want my dog to be happy. I don't want to discipline my dog. When in fact, I'm telling you the way to create a happy dog is through discipline, is through rules, and is through boundaries. Guys, the first and foremost, the first thing we got to say today is I can 100% guarantee you, 100% guarantee you, like literally, I cannot stress this enough. I can 100% guarantee that if you provide balanced boundaries, rules, and discipline for your dog, you're going to have a happy, healthier dog. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is how this stuff works. So when they find, and I come across people who are like, I don't want to discipline my dog, David, I go, look, you don't have a choice. Like you don't really have a choice in the matter. And I know people go, David, I don't want to. Guys, discipline doesn't mean something horrible. Like let's dive into it. Discipline and boundaries are not a terrible thing. And as a matter of fact, whether you realize it or not, you have discipline and boundaries going on every single day in your life. I mean, think about it, guys. Did you wake up this morning within 4 walls, an apartment, a building, a home, a structure? A boundary? What? No way, David. My house isn't a boundary. Yes, it is. Your house is a physical boundary to keep out elements, to keep out animals, and to keep out people that you don't want in there. I don't know how else to show you a physical boundary that you work with and use every single day of your life, day in and day out. There is not a more perfect example of a physical boundary that is necessary to what? Keep you safe. Wow. So could I take it a step further and argue that a balance, not too much, not too little, a balance of boundaries or rules or discipline. Yes, guys, we can kind of exchange these words here. We're going to talk about this. Could I argue that a balance of these things actually creates a happy, healthier life? I mean, it seems like a pretty easy, resounding yes to me. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that having my 4 walls of my home around me keep me safe and allow me to have a happier, healthier, safer life. So let's take it a step further. So could I say providing boundaries, rules, and discipline for my dogs actually helps to create a happier, healthier life? Yes. Yes is the answer, guys. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about what boundaries you need to be providing for your dog, how to provide those boundaries for your dog, and really keeping it going, putting it into play. Okay. So when we start talking about boundaries and rules and discipline and all these things, I know a lot of people cringe. I mean, I don't really get it anymore, to be honest. Like, oh, discipline. Guys, you use it all the time. So let's stop cringing. Let's accept it. That discipline in a balanced way, given in a, like, there's got to be the asterisk, right? Too much of anything is never a good thing, guys. Too much discipline, bad. Too much affection and that kind of crap, also bad. You know what I'm saying? It's all about the balance. And so that's the first thing when we start to talk about how to provide boundaries for our dog. The first word that needs to come to mind for you is balance. You have to ask yourself, am I being a little too disciplinary right now? Maybe. Am I being a little too lenient right now? Probably. Okay, majority of you are going to fall under the latter. You are most likely being way too lenient with your dog. And when I say most likely, guys, I can pretty much guarantee that you are. Because most people do not provide enough balanced discipline for their dogs. And really quick, I'm going to get into a little story. Now, it'll take 2 seconds. I was traveling recently, flying. I was at an airport. And it's funny, actually, both flights. The flight on the way up, I can't tell you how many dogs were on that flight. It was crazy. At the same time, once the flight got going, I will say all the dogs actually behaved pretty well. It was pretty good. In the terminal, not so much. Now, on the way back, my flight on the way back, there was only one dog on the flight. Actually, I don't even come to think of it. I don't know that dog ended up on our flight, but they were in the terminal. And my wife and I were having dinner at the airport before we're getting on our plane. And we noticed this dog next to it. It's the little doodle, girlfriend, whatever she is, has got a younger couple. They've got the dog in a carrier. And, she had the carrier open and was petting the dog a little bit. Dog's clearly a little bit nervous. And I get, maybe she's making it more nervous, but we're not talking about that today. Okay. So what I do want to focus on is the fact that the dog was getting a little anxious. Now, and again, did the owner inadvertently maybe reinforce this anxiety at first? Possibly. But you know what? She closed it. She put the dog down. And then the dog started to whine a little. And the boyfriend just leaned over and said, no, to the dog. Gave her a little correction, not to the girlfriend, just for the record. Leaned over and corrected the dog very lightly and very appropriately. And 3 corrections, guys. It took 3 corrections over the course of like 10, 15 minutes. 3 redirect, almost more of a redirection, if you will. Still a correction. And the dog stopped. Relaxed. Calmed down. Notice what they didn't do. It's okay, Fluffy. It's up. No, they told the dog to stop. Discipline, rules, boundaries. There it is. That's how you get a dog to stop. And I was very proud of them. I don't know them, but I was very proud of them because they were creating a boundary in a chaotic environment where, most people are going to go, oh, my dog is so scared. I need to cuddle them. I need to pull them out and hold them at the food table. And no, instead, this couple said, no, the dog needs to be on the ground and we need to correct her because she's whining and being anxious. And it fixed it. It actually corrected the situation, which is not mind-boggling to me, but it is to a lot of people. Boundaries, guys. Boundaries. That is a prime example of what a boundary with your dog can look like. Okay? When we talk about dog training, I think one of the biggest things that people miss out on with a boundary that they could create for their dog is teaching their dog to sit still. It's a lost art form, teaching a dog to sit still and relax. It's an important thing. And so this is number 1 right here, guys. This is the number 1 thing you need to be practicing with your dogs is teaching them to relax and sit still. To me, if you have that boundary in place, it's such a great fundamental foundational building block that then you can do anything from there. Okay. So how do we teach our dogs this? A spot command. In fact, yes, a spot command. Very simplistic, guys. We're going to get a dog bed. We're going to get a leash. We're going to get a collar and we're going to get a treat pouch. 4 tools that we need in order to do this exercise. Okay. We're going to leash up our dogs. Then I'm going to have my treats and treat pouch on. And very simply put, if your dog doesn't know a spot command or a place, a station command, whatever you want to call it, we're going to take the leash. I'm going to guide them over to the bed. We're going to get right in front of the bed, stop. I'm going to look at them, get their attention, and say, hey, go to your spot. go place, go whatever command you want to use, go to your bed. Then I'm going to guide them over using the leash. And the second that their feet touch that dog bed, I'm going to say, good boy, and give them a treat. Okay? Then I'm going to release them. My release word is all right. So they need to know they need to stay on the bed until I release them. I'm going to say, all right, they're going to come off the dog bed because I'm going to guide them away with the leash. Say, good. Rinse and repeat. We're going to guide them over to the dog bed again. Say, go to your spot. The second the feet touch the dog bed, give them a treat. Okay? Then we're going to start to shape that. Okay? The second the front feet touch the dog bed, that's when I give the treat the first few times. After a few times, I'm going to raise my expectations to expecting them to get all 4 feet on the dog bed. Then I'm going to reward them with that treat. Once they get this, we're going to extend it a little more. We're going to get all 4 feet on the dog bed, but I'm also going to ask for a sit command. Give them a treat. Then once they get that, all right, release them, rinse and repeat a few times. Once we got the sit command, then we're going to tell them to stay. All right? Then we can actually even ask for a lie down. You see what I'm doing here? All I'm doing is creating, extending a stay. And in doing so, I'm actually teaching my dog to relax because we're putting them in a sit position, a lie down position, and they end up learning, boy, all I do is sit here on this dog bed and I get fed. This is pretty cool. I'm going to keep doing this. And that's all you got to practice, guys. You're going to practice keeping them on the dog bed for 30 seconds to a minute at a time, working it up to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, working it up to being able to walk out of the room and walk away. If you can create this very important boundary, promise, guys, I promise you your training is going to go a lot better. Okay, so this is one very simple exercise I want you to practice at home, teaching your dog to relax and teaching a very simplistic but very important boundary. Okay, now from there, what else can we do to create a boundary? Guys, it always goes back to it. The walk. Yes, the walk is literally the best way to create boundaries and rules with your dog. It is even above the spot, right? Even above teaching our dogs to relax. It is the most important aspect of teaching our dogs rules, discipline, and boundaries. Not to mention, it's a bonding experience for you guys. It's a pack bonding experience, and it's only going to make your relationship better. Okay, so how do we create boundaries on the walk? Look, guys, we're not going to get into the intricacies of the walk today, but what I will say is I'm going to give you a handful of things. Okay, first thing is we always want to be using the right tools, 6-foot nylon or leather leash, and a martingale collar with the chain. Okay, then we're going to have treats and a treat pouch on us. And then very simple rules on the walk, guys. And again, I'm not getting into the intricacies. This is just kind of the coverall. You never want your dog to be out in front of you. You want your dog to be beside or behind you. This isn't an alpha mentality. No. This is because dogs can only focus on one thing at a time. So if your dog is out in front of you, they can't pay attention to what's going on with you. It's very hard to establish boundaries and rules if your dog isn't paying attention. If your dog's 6 feet out in front of you, they're not going to be paying attention. So your dog should always be beside or behind you. Another tip is if they do start to get in front of you, try just turning and walking the opposite direction, redirecting their focus back to you, maybe with a little kissy noise, calling their name, and reinforcing it with a treat when they do redirect your eye contact. It's also a good idea to intermittently redirect their focus, kissy noise as we're walking, making sure we can keep getting their attention and reinforcing and strengthening that. Okay. This is very simple. We're creating a boundary of 1, you need to pay attention when I ask you to. 2, okay, there's a physical boundary of the leash and the collar and learning how to deal with it. And 3, there's even the boundary of this isn't a free-for-all. There's some structure here. You need to stay with me. You can't get in front of me. I'm going to redirect you. Okay. Very simplistic. That's the very, very simplistic gist of a walk right there. But if you start implementing these little things, you'll see a huge difference. Okay. Third way we can implement boundaries with our dog. This one's even easier, guys. This is probably the easiest one there is. Say the word no and do something. You heard me. If your dog is doing something you don't like, you have to do something about it. You can't just scream no 50 times from across the room and expect them to change. That's why I say we have to say no and do something about it. The only reason the word no means anything, guys, is because you condition it to, right? You can't just yell the word no and expect your dog to stop. They don't speak English. They don't know what that means. All right. So you actually have to make some form of correction, redirection, whether that's through touch corrections, redirections, collar corrections and redirections. Okay. It has to be some sort of physical or mental way to stop that behavior that you don't like from happening, to what? Create a boundary. All right. But you have to do something. You have to do something. I can't tell you how many times my clients go, well, I tell them no. And I go, well, yeah, but like, what have you done to establish that no means anything? And they go, well, I don't know. I tell them no. Like, that's not good enough. Guys, the only reason any word ever on this planet means anything to a dog is because it's been conditioned through a stimulus. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only reason no is going to mean no is because I physically showed them no. Do not be afraid to tell your dogs no. It's a powerful tool if used correctly. Now, again, guys, the asterisk I'm going to give for all this boundary stuff, once again, I've said it a few times throughout the segment, but I want to make sure I emphasize it. Balance. It's all about balance. You'll notice I'm telling you to bring a treats and treat pouch as well as a collar for corrections. Balance, reinforcement, punishment. It's all about balance. So I don't want to get an email of David, my husband was listening to your podcast and he's being so mean with the dog. Now he's jerking on him with the collar left and right. And he's just yelling at him, telling him no. Balance, guys. The only reason we need to give a correction is if there is a reason to give a correction. If we need to decrease a behavior. And even then I try to redirect a behavior before I go straight to the correction. Okay. So I want to make that side note. You can hear, I try to go in with balance. I can't just throw treats at them and expect it to change. I can't just throw corrections at them and expect them to change. It's all about showing them what we like, what we don't like, reinforcing and conditioning those behaviors, all through creating what? Boundaries. All right. So I gave you guys a couple quick examples today on how to start creating boundaries for your dog. But again, at the end of the day, you're going to determine what your rules are for your dog. And I mean this in a way to empower you, but I also want you to do it correctly. And so what I'm trying to say is let your rules and your dog be just that. It's your rules and your dog. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. I've heard people where they go, my friends tell me I should never let my dogs on the furniture. I'm like, what business is it of your friends to tell you whether your dog should be on their furniture or not? I'll tell you the context of it. Is your dog controlling and overbearing? Well, then, yeah, maybe on the furniture is not the best idea, at least to start with for training purposes. See what I'm saying? It's not about, well, they're allowed on and they're not allowed. No, that's your rule, guys. You get to decide that and be empowered by that. Look, I have a client of mine who I love dearly. She's amazing. She works harder than anybody I know with her dog. And it kills me because there are people in her neighborhood who love to try to tell her that they know better. And she is kicking butt with her dog. You know what I mean? To see where this dog started and to see where we are now is just night and day. I mean, it's just a different universe. And the fact that people in her neighborhood think they know better, especially when their dog is a misbehaving little brat, it just blows my mind. And so I want to say this to empower you as the dog owner. If you know what you're doing is right, if you're working with a professional, if you're making wonderful progress behaviorally with your dog, then tune out the noise. At the same time, if your dog might be the problem, if your dog is pulling, yanking, barking, jumping, yapping, maybe you have a lack of discipline. Maybe you have a lack of boundaries, and maybe, just maybe, you're the one in the wrong. Food for thought today. So work on creating healthy boundaries for your dog, healthy discipline, and creating that balance between affection and discipline, right? But having healthy boundaries, guys, I'm here to tell you as a professional, not only is it necessary, it is amazing when you do it. You will see better results. This is one of the few things I can 100% guarantee you in dog training. If you provide balanced boundaries, you will have a happier, healthier dog. Are you tired of your dog barking all the time? Or maybe you want them to stop jumping on people when they come over? Or does your dog take you for a walk instead of the other way around? Well, we can help. At the Nature of Training and Speak a Dogcast, we are committed to improving the relationships and lives people have with their pets. No matter what behavioral issue you are experiencing, from an unruly puppy to more severe issues, we can help. Our virtual training programs are catered to you and your pet and create a training plan that gets results. For more information, you can check out our website at www.thenatureoftraining.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram at Speak a Dogcast. With the ability to connect, teach, and train with pet owners around the world, together we can make a better home for our furry friends. The Nature of Training and Speak a Dogcast, helping you achieve success with your pet. Next on Speak a Dogcast, Pet Hurricane Preparedness. Yes, any of my Floridian friends, y'all know what I'm talking about, but however, it's not just my Floridian friends, is it? It's everybody up and down the East Coast lately. Some of those hurricanes reaching, as far up as like Massachusetts, New England. Nuts, like crazy, crazy stuff. And, especially I feel for my friends up in the north. You guys are not the most prepared for hurricanes because you used to not have to be. But now it's something a lot more people have to consider and think about. Look, hurricane preparedness is no joke, guys. I'm born and raised in Florida. I've been through my share of hurricanes. I was actually graduating high school, 2004, 2005, the 2004 hurricane season when we had, how many hurricanes come across the state and wreak havoc. And funny thing is, I actually live in the area now that two of those hurricanes came direct hits. I lived in Orlando at the time, still really bad, scary stuff. And, look, I think I'd rather take a hurricane than a lot of other natural disasters like earthquakes and tornadoes because, hell, at least I get a warning. You know what I mean? But it's terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying to be in the path of a hurricane. And, like, you talk to Floridians and we do joke, a category 1 through 3 and even maybe a 4. We're like, yeah, whatever. But when those category 5s start coming at you, it's a whole different story. Really is. And luckily in my time, I think I've only had 2 category 5s come kind of straight at me. And luckily both times, knock on wood, they have missed. Anyway, hurricane preparedness with your animals cannot be more important, and it can be a little stressful. So it's better that you get this out of the way. And this is why I'm doing it early in the hurricane season, guys. Let's think about these things now. Look, full-blown honesty, my wife and I, we have to think about this, obviously, right? Like, look at our situation. We have a lot of dogs, a lot of animals, and we have a water stash. We have gallons of water sitting in our garage ready to go. That we collect slowly over the year. We usually buy 1 to 2 every second or third grocery trip to make sure we have enough, and we're rotating it out and everything. Because it's very important. And that's kind of where we have to start with the hurricane preparedness. Is the most important thing is water. Water. You guys got to have enough water for yourselves, and you have to have enough water for your animals. And of course, we're talking about summertime. We're talking about no AC, no power, potentially being really dehydrated. So here it is. The rule of thumb is this, hurricane preparedness, they say that you should have a gallon of water per person in your household per day. 1 gallon of water per person per day after a hurricane. It's the same with pets. They recommend the same 1 gallon of water for each of your pets. Now, obviously, guys, if you have a 6-pound dog, I don't know that your 6-pound dog is going to drink an entire gallon in a day, but I would so much rather have more water, obviously, than not enough. So again, that 1 gallon per day per creature in your home rule is the rule in your home is definitely a good rule to go by. So again, I'm preparing all year long for that with the water. I think you guys should too. Now, part of it for us is we're also on a well. And God forbid the well gets damaged during the hurricane, any of the well system or anything like that, we could really be out of water for potentially a long time. And so that's why it's something that we really try to prepare hard for. My horse, same thing, like his water trough. I'm not going to be able to fill that giant water trough. Luckily, it's going to be a lot of rain. But before the hurricane, I'm going to make sure that trough is dumped, clean, and filled to the brim. Okay, so he's got that extra water as well. And I'll most likely be standing in a pasture of water, but, And look, there's the other thing. I have a horse to think about. We don't need to get into horse preparedness because, I'll be honest, most equine people, y'all know what you're doing. You don't normally take on a giant creature like that if you don't know what you're doing. So we don't need to get into horse preparedness. We're talking about dogs and cats. All right, so the next thing we need to think about is also all their safety. Guys, are your dog tags up to date? Are your dog's dog tags and microchip information? Maybe you haven't thought about that in a couple years. Make sure you go find your login for your microchip information and make sure it's updated on all your dogs because God forbid they get lost during a hurricane. You have to make sure you have their info. Okay. Also make sure your leashes are good. We don't have any half-ripped leashes going on. Make sure you have good quality leashes and collars for an emergency situation like that. How about medications? let's make sure our pets' medications are filled. You're probably thinking about yourself and your own meds. Don't forget about your pets' meds as well. It could easily be 2 weeks after a hurricane. All you new Floridians, I'm talking to you guys, seriously. It could easily be 2 weeks before your vet gets power restored, or a full 2 weeks before all the roads are cleared enough that you can get out and even get a prescription for your pet. So definitely have to think about having those medications. Food, same thing, guys. When we come to hurricane season, we always try to make sure we've got an extra bag of food, at least one extra bag of food lying around in the house. Goes for my horse, my dogs, and man, I was about to say my cat, but that's the first time that's happened. That was a bummer. Yeah. And those of you guys that don't know, unfortunately, we had to put down my kitty a couple weeks ago. She was very old. She was 20. It was time. Bummer. Anyway, so I don't need cat food, which is, or her cat med, or all her medications, or all the things we had to think about with her. Okay, let's move on. So, and I lost my train of thought there. Woof, there we go. Okay, so water, food, medications. Important stuff, guys. Important stuff. How about where you're going? What about your plan? Do you know where the closest shelter is that's going to take in pets? How about a copy of their vaccine records? So important. Oh my gosh, David, I didn't even think about that. Yes, really important, guys. Get those vaccine records printed out and put them in a Ziploc bag. Also very important, guys. Records need to be in a watertight bag for hurricane preparedness. Because if you don't have your pet's records, the vaccine records, there's a chance, there is, that one of those shelters may not let you in. Because, of course, there's going to be other animals, other dogs, other cats around, and they need to know that your pet has been vaccinated. So be sure you have a copy of those records on hand during hurricane season. Okay. Yeah. Really, really important stuff here, guys. Really important. Okay. But with that, have a plan. Know where the closest shelter is. Know your escape route. And look, for that matter, seriously, think about your evacuation plans. Do you have enough crates for all your dogs? Because you're going to have a crate if you're going to an animal-friendly shelter. Okay. And I know some of you are going, oh my gosh, David, I don't have a crate. I threw that thing away years ago. My dog hasn't lived in a crate in years since he was a puppy. Well, you better have one ready to go for hurricane season, guys. It's something to think about. Okay. All the tools you're going to need for your dog: crate, leashes, collars, beds. It might even be a good idea to have a go bag for your dog, have some treats or have some toys and things like that ready to go. Look, we stockpile food for ourselves during hurricane season. You need to be thinking about your pets, and it's not just the food, right? The toys and stuff too, to keep them entertained and keep them busy. Look, hurricane season is one of these things where it's better, and I know it sounds a little Boy Scouty, but, or Scouts of America. You got to be prepared, guys. You need to be prepared. It is so much better. We eat half of our hurricane supplies by the end of the season, because obviously they'll go bad and we got to restock them. But you've got to think about these things for your pets. You've got to think about these things for yourselves, because as an experienced Floridian who's been through this stuff, it's no joke. It is not something you want to be preparing for last minute and scrambling for. Wouldn't it be better to not be one of the crazies in the stores running around like a chicken with their heads cut off? I don't know about you, but it's unavoidable to some degree. We all do it, but it's better to be prepared. So remember, guys, the most important thing about hurricane preparedness to me is going to be water. You got to have a water supply. That's without a doubt one of the most, if not the most important thing. Remember the rule: 1 gallon per person or per animal per day. Be sure you're stockpiling the water ahead of time. You're not waiting till the last minute. Like, that's what we do. We don't wait till the last minute. We stockpile water throughout the year. It's an easy thing to do when you're at the grocery store, guys. So really need to be thinking about that. Of course, we also want to make sure our pets' tags, vaccination records, and microchips, all that stuff's up to date. You also want to get a copy of those vaccine records in case you need to evacuate to a shelter. With that said, your dog also is going to need to be crate trained. You're going to want to make sure you bring a crate with you. Have a stockpile of food, medications, all these things ready to go so that you're better prepared for hurricane season. Guys, stay safe. Good luck out there. Better to be safe than sorry. And be sure you're prepared for this year's hurricane season. The answer to today's trivia question: how far can owls turn their heads? It's 270 degrees. Next on Speaking Dogcast, it's the History of Animal Mascots 101. Today, we'll be talking about the University of Kentucky. University of Kentucky was founded in 1865, originally as the Agricultural and Mechanical College of Kentucky, and after a few name changes, finally became University of Kentucky in 1923. Now, the mascot of the University of Kentucky is the Wildcats, and specifically they are meant to be represented by the Bobcat. Now, the school earned the nickname after a 1909 football team victory beating Illinois 6-2. Commandant Philip W. Carbusier, then head of the military department at Old State University, ended up coming up with the name. We told a group of students in a chapel service after the game that the Kentucky football team, quote, fought like wildcats. The name gained popularity among students and the media, and the name then stuck. Now, in the early days, there were a few live bobcats used to represent the school, but bobcats don't really like crowds of people and did not do well in a sports environment. Now, it took until the 1976-77 season for a costume mascot to be created. Then student Gary Tanner was the first to put on a costume and entertain fans at football and basketball games, and it simply became known as the Wildcat. Now, years later, the school would develop a kid-friendly mascot named Scratch, who wears a backwards hat and serves as the host of the Kentucky Junior Wildcat Club. Next on Speak a Dogcast, it's the listener Q&A. The first question today comes from Jared from Cincinnati, Ohio. Jared says, my wife and I rescued a dog recently and he has some anxiety issues. Now, in just 2 weeks, we are seeing a big difference in his progress and we hope to continue down the right path. He is a little on the skinny side and the rescue has been working on putting some weight on him. However, I still think he could stand to gain a little more weight. However, he's not the best eater though. Any tips on how to increase his appetite? Jared, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, look, I'm curious. I mean, you didn't mention what the rescue was doing to put weight on. I was curious if they were doing any steps or anything. Look, sometimes it is maybe just finding something the dog is motivated by when we're trying to put weight on. Obviously, we want them to be eating their kibble and things that are nutritional, but there's also nothing wrong with a few extra treats if we're trying to put weight on the dog. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with giving them a milk bone or two, a couple meaty treats throughout the day. You can give a few more than a couple if they're a little thin. You know what I mean? At the same time, if he's not a big eater, that's just it. I want you to find something that's going to motivate him. 2 things on a diet we can use. Actually, 3 things. I'll give you 3. You can use a little beef broth, chicken broth, something like that to just kind of pour over a little tablespoon, maybe 2-3 tablespoons of that over the food. I sometimes like to stay away from that because sometimes the dogs like that a little too much. And then it almost becomes within the taste of their food because it's a liquid, it gets absorbed. And when that broth is not there, they tend to go, wait, if they are an anxious/picky eater, right? Because it's the anxiety getting in the way. Another thing we can try is pumpkin. A little scoop of pumpkin. Yeah, canned pumpkin. Pureed pumpkin's really good. It can actually help add some fat, meat on the bone, if you will. And it's good for them too. So I like that, as well as a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. Olive oil has been a great thing. Obviously, olive oil is healthy. Can be good for them as well, good for their coat. Some people just put a tablespoon of olive oil on their dog's food because they swear by it for the dog's fur. So there's lots of benefits to the olive oil, as well as adding, obviously it's an oil, you're going to be adding some fat there. So those are great ways to try to add some weight on. Now, I know this sounds a little counterintuitive, if you will, but you almost want to increase your dog's exercise a little bit. And it's not that I want them to get skinnier, but if you increase the exercise, you might actually get their metabolism going better. And if their metabolism is going better, they're going to be more likely to eat. So obviously don't overdo the exercise if we have a dog. You said he's a little thin. You're not saying he's super thin. If they're super thin, then yeah, we need to focus on the food more than anything. But if they just need to gain a little more weight, there's nothing wrong with exercising them while we're trying to add a few pounds. I know that sounds a little strange, but like I said, you might be surprised that it'll get his appetite going, as well as mentally it can help him, because clearly the anxiety is getting in the way of eating. So if I can get him in a better mental state, that can help get him in a better physical state. So I hope some of those tips help out. Jared, let me know if you have any more questions. Next question. This comes from Pamela from Haddonfield, New Jersey. Now, Pamela says, I listened to one of your podcast episodes and heard you saying that I shouldn't give my dog a pup cup from Starbucks. I was wondering if you really honestly think that giving them a little whipped cream is really a problem. I don't think it is. Pamela, thank you for the controversial question. I love it. Someone challenging me. Look, Pamela, a tiny bit of whipped cream once in a blue moon may not kill your dog, right? It's not going to kill your dog. But I can guarantee you that you talk to any veterinarian and they're going to say dairy is not good for your dog, period. No ifs, ands, or buts. So Pamela, you have to look at it from the perspective of, I'm talking about people, and these people exist, that literally give their dogs a damn pup cup every single day of their lives. That they have a 6-pound chihuahua and they're feeding a cup of whipped cream that is bigger than the chihuahua's stomach and head. You're really going to tell me, Pamela, you don't think that's going to screw up a dog's insides to have so much dairy that it literally can overfill their stomach because of how much dairy they're getting? I'm sorry, Pamela, but no, you're kind of wrong here in some degree. I get what you're saying, and you're looking for validation, Pamela. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. You're looking for validation to feed your dog a pup cup. Look, I said it earlier in this podcast today, and I don't pretend to make the rules for your dogs, guys. It's your dog. You want to go and feed your dog whipped cream and have them have diarrhea and feel like crap after? That's your prerogative. If you're about making your dog not feel good, that's on you. If that makes you feel better, I don't know what to tell you, Pamela, because I'm just telling you from an expert, from veterinarians, not me. I'm not the biology expert, that dairy is not good for your dog. They're not meant to eat a ton of dairy. Little piece of cheese here, little piece of cheese there. Yeah, it's not going to kill your dog. Little dairy here, little dairy there. No, it's not going to kill your dog. It's not horrible for them. But I don't believe that dogs need all this extra crap. We have so many great dog treats out there and things that are designed and curated for your dog that why do we need to give them a cup full of whipped cream? That's my 2 cents, Pamela. Whether you want to follow it or not, that's up to you. You know what I mean? That's your prerogative. So more power to you, whether you want to listen to me or not. You know what I mean? And more power to me for putting out great information. So good luck, Pamela. I hope your dog doesn't poop his brains out. That's going to wrap up the podcast today. Thank you so much for listening in. If you haven't clicked that subscribe or that follow button, do so right now. New episodes come out every Wednesday, and you're going to want to check them out. You can also follow me on Instagram at SpeakADogcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel at SpeakADogcast, and if you'd like to support the show even further, become a patron of the show today, patreon.com/SpeakADogcast. If you love the show, if you love what you're hearing, do me a favor, scroll on down, give me that 5-star rating. YouTube channel subscribers, click that thumbs up. Yes, I want to thank my patrons, my pup supporter Regula Wright, and my dog friend Maureen Frozen. Have a wonderful week, and don't forget to get out there and walk your dog.